His 12-year-old daughter begged him to let the homeless woman sleep in their garage. He said yes to make her happy. But when he finally saw the woman's face in the morning light, his coffee mug shattered on the floor. This is a story about a single father, a daughter's compassion, and a truth that had been buried for 15 years. Before we continue, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. Connor Branson was late picking up his daughter from school. Again. Traffic had been brutal, and his boss had kept him 30 minutes past his shift at Davidson Construction. When he finally pulled up to Riverside Middle School, most of the cars were already gone. His daughter Madison was sitting on the front steps, and she wasn't alone. Next to her sat a woman, maybe in her 50s, with matted grey hair and clothes that had seen better days. A shopping cart filled with plastic bags and blankets sat nearby. Connor's heart sank. He knew that look on Madison's face. It was the same look she got at animal shelters. The look that said, "Dad, we have to help." And Connor already knew he was going to say yes. Because that's what single fathers do when their daughters look at them like that. They say yes, even when they shouldn't. Madison climbed into the truck, and Connor expected her to launch into her pitch immediately. But she was quiet. Too quiet. She twisted her hands in her lap, gathering courage. Finally, she spoke. "Dad, her name is Dorothy. She's been sleeping behind the school for 3 days. The janitor told her she had to leave, that she has nowhere to go. She's hungry, and it's supposed to get cold tonight. Like really cold. Below freezing." Connor glanced in the rearview mirror. Dorothy was still sitting on those steps, staring at nothing with empty eyes. The kind of emptiness that comes from years of surviving instead of living. "Maddie, sweetheart, we can't just bring home every person who needs help. It's not safe. We don't know her. I know her now. I talked to her during lunch. She's not dangerous, Dad. She's just sad. Really, really sad." Connor sighed. He'd been a single father for 8 years, ever since his wife Jessica died in a car accident when Madison was only 4. And in those 8 years, Madison had developed the biggest heart he'd ever seen. She volunteered at soup kitchens every other Saturday. She donated half her allowance to homeless shelters. She cried watching those sad animal commercials and made Connor donate to every single one. He'd raised her that way on purpose, teaching her that compassion mattered more than comfort, that helping others was more important than convenience. But sometimes, her compassion put them in situations that scared him. "I'm not asking to bring her into the house," Madison continued, her voice getting stronger. "I'm asking if she can sleep in the garage. Just for tonight. We have that old sleeping bag and some blankets. And it's supposed to drop to 28 degrees tonight. 28, Dad. She could die out there." Connor felt his resolve crumbling. His daughter had inherited his soft heart, and she knew exactly how to use it. "One night, Maddie. That's it. Tomorrow morning we help her find a shelter or call social services or something. Deal?" Madison's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Deal. Thank you, Dad. Thank you so much. You're the best father in the entire world. Don't thank me yet. We still have to convince her to come with us. Some people prefer the streets to charity." They drove back to the school. Connor got out slowly, trying to look non-threatening. Dorothy flinched when he approached, her body language screaming decades of learned wariness. She'd been hurt before. Many times. My name is Connor Branson. This is my daughter Madison. She tells me you've been having a rough time. We'd like to offer you a warm place to sleep tonight. Just our garage, nothing fancy. But it's dry and warm, and we can bring you some blankets and hot food. No strings attached." Dorothy looked at him with eyes that had seen too much suffering, too many broken promises. Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper, like she'd forgotten how to speak at normal volume. "Why would you do that? What do you want from me?" Connor knelt down to her level, making himself less intimidating. "Nothing. We don't want anything. My daughter is worried about you. And honestly, so am I. It's going to be dangerously cold tonight. I can't in good conscience leave you out here." Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Madison, at this young girl with hope still shining in her eyes. And something shifted in her expression. When was the last time someone had looked at her like she mattered? Just tonight? Just tonight. Tomorrow will help you figure out resources, shelters, whatever you need. But tonight you'll be safe and warm. Dorothy nodded slowly, unable to speak through the emotion clogging her throat. They helped her stand. Her legs were unsteady, weak from malnutrition and sleeping on concrete. They helped her load her shopping cart into the truck bed. Madison carefully arranged Dorothy's belongings, treating them with the same respect she'd treat anyone's possessions. The whole drive home, Dorothy sat in the back seat, silent, staring out the window like she couldn't quite believe this was happening. Like she was waiting for the catch, the moment when these seemingly kind people would reveal their true intentions. But the catch never came. They simply drove to a modest house on Maple Street, a small 2-bedroom home with peeling paint and a chain-link fence. Nothing fancy. But to Dorothy, who'd been sleeping on concrete for longer than she could remember, it looked like a palace. When they got inside, Madison immediately went into full caretaker mode. She'd done this before with injured birds, stray cats, and that one time with a possum that turned out to not be as friendly as she'd hoped. But this was different. This was a human being who'd been invisible to the world for so long, she'd almost forgotten she was real. "Okay, Grandma Dorothy," Madison said, then caught herself. "Oh, sorry. Is it okay if I call you that? You remind me of what I imagine a grandma would be like." Connor's heart clenched. Madison had never known her grandmothers. Both had passed before she was born. She'd always wanted that grandmother relationship, that special bond other kids seemed to have. Dorothy's eyes filled with fresh tears. "You can call me whatever you'd like, sweetheart." Madison beamed. "Okay. So, Grandma Dorothy, let me show you where you'll sleep. Dad, can you grab the good sleeping bag from the hall closet? The blue one, not the one with the broken zipper." Connor did as instructed, smiling at his daughter's organizational skills. She'd definitely gotten that from Jessica, not him. Madison led Dorothy to the garage, which Connor had converted into a workshop years ago, but rarely used anymore. She plugged in a space heater and arranged blankets and pillows into a makeshift bed. "It's not much, but it should be comfortable and warm. The space heater gets really hot, so don't put anything too close to it. Oh, and there's a bathroom right through that door. Dad converted it when he thought he'd use this space more. You can shower if you want. We have soap and shampoo and everything." Dorothy looked around the garage like it was a 5-star hotel. "This is more than enough. This is more than I deserve. Everyone deserves a warm place to sleep," Madison said matter-of-factly. "That's what Dad always says. Basic human dignity isn't something you have to earn." Connor stood in the doorway, watching his 12-year-old daughter teach lessons about humanity that most adults never learned. Pride swelled in his chest so intensely it almost hurt. "Now, let's get you some food. Are you hungry?" "Of course you're hungry." Dumb question. "Come on." Madison led Dorothy back into the house. Connor had already started heating up leftover soup and making sandwiches. Dorothy sat at their small kitchen table, looking around at the modest home. School artwork covered the refrigerator. Dishes were stacked neatly in the drying rack. A calendar on the wall showed Madison's soccer schedule and Connor's work shifts. It was clearly the home of a single parent doing their best. Nothing fancy, nothing pristine, but filled with love in every corner. Here you go, Connor said, setting down a bowl of chicken noodle soup and a turkey sandwich. It's not gourmet, but it's hot and filling. Dorothy picked up the spoon with shaking hands. She took a sip of the soup and closed her eyes, savoring it like it was the finest meal she'd ever tasted. Which, given her circumstances, it might have been. This is delicious. Thank you. Madison sat down across from her, chin in her hands, watching Dorothy with open curiosity. How long have you been homeless, Grandma Dorothy? Maddie, Connor said gently. That might be too personal. It's okay, Dorothy said quietly. I've been on the streets for a long time, more than a decade. I lost track of the years after a while. They all blur together when every day is just about surviving. Do you have family? Someone we could call? Dorothy's expression closed off. No family. They're all gone. Madison reached across the table and patted Dorothy's hand. Well, you have us now. At least for tonight. And Dad always says that sometimes the family you choose is just as important as the family you're born with. Dorothy looked at this young girl, this beacon of hope and innocence, and something inside her cracked. A wall she'd built around her heart to survive. She started crying, really crying, tears streaming down her weathered face. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to cry. It's okay to cry, Madison said wisely. Crying means you're feeling something. Dad says that's always better than feeling nothing at all. Connor grabbed a box of tissues and set them on the table. Take your time. There's no rush. Dorothy ate slowly, crying between bites, overwhelmed by the simple kindness of a warm meal and gentle company. When she finished, Madison showed her where the bathroom was, gave her fresh towels, and even found some of Connor's old t-shirts and sweatpants that might fit. You can shower and change. Take as long as you need. The water gets really hot, so be careful. And there's this fancy soap that smells like lavender that Dad got me for my birthday. You can use it if you want. After Dorothy disappeared into the bathroom, Connor pulled Madison aside. You did good today, kiddo. I'm proud of you. We learned it from you, Dad. You're always helping people. Remember when you fixed Mrs. Chun's porch for free? Or when you bought groceries for Mr. Rodriguez when he lost his job? You help people all the time. That's different. How is it different? Connor thought about it. I guess it's not. You're right. They heard the shower turn on. Madison smiled. She's going to feel so much better. Everyone feels better after a hot shower. An hour later, Dorothy emerged from the bathroom looking like a different person. Her hair was clean, her face scrubbed. Connor's old clothes hung on her thin frame, but they were clean and warm. She looked almost human again, almost like someone who belonged in the world instead of hiding from it. Feel better? Madison asked. I can't remember the last time I felt this clean. Thank you. Both of you. They set Dorothy up in the garage with extra blankets, the space heater on low, and a bottle of water. Connor showed her where the flashlight was, how to lock the door from the inside if it made her feel safer, and reminded her she could knock on the back door if she needed anything during the night. Thank you, Dorothy said again. You don't know what this means to me. Sleep well, Dorothy. Tomorrow will help you figure out next steps. After they went inside, Connor helped Madison with her homework. Math problems about fractions that seemed unnecessarily complicated. Madison worked through them methodically, but he could tell her mind was elsewhere. Dad, do you think Grandma Dorothy has kids somewhere? Like, real kids who miss her? Connor set down his coffee. I don't know, sweetheart. Homelessness is complicated. Sometimes people have family but can't reach them. Sometimes bridges get burned. Sometimes people are just alone. That's really sad. Everyone should have someone who cares if they're okay. You're right. Everyone should. Do you think she'd be okay? Like, after tonight? When she has to leave? Connor chose his words carefully. I hope so. We'll do everything we can to help her find resources. Shelters, social services, job programs. There are organizations that help homeless people get back on their feet. But what if they can't help her? What if she ends up back on the streets? Then we'll know we did what we could. Sometimes, Maddie, you can't save everyone. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Madison nodded, but Connor could see she was troubled. His daughter had a rescuer's heart, and it hurt her when she couldn't fix everything. After she went to bed, Connor found himself standing at the back window, looking out at the garage where Dorothy was sleeping. Something nagged at him, something familiar he couldn't quite place. The way Dorothy held herself, the shape of her face, those green eyes. But he told himself he was being ridiculous. He'd never met this woman before in his life. Still, sleep didn't come easily. He kept thinking about Dorothy's story. More than a decade on the streets. No family. All alone. How did someone end up that way? What series of tragedies and bad choices led a person to sleeping behind middle schools in November? Around 2 a.m, Connor gave up on sleep. He made himself tea and sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone. He found himself looking at old photos. Pictures of his mother, Evelyn Branson, who disappeared 15 years ago when Connor was 22 years old. She just vanished one day, left for the grocery store and never came home. No body, no evidence of foul play. No note. Nothing. The police investigated for months but found no leads. After 5 years, she'd been declared legally dead. His father, Robert, had died 2 years after that. Heart attack, the doctors said. But Connor always believed it was a broken heart. His father had loved his mother desperately, and never knowing what happened to her had destroyed him from the inside out. Connor looked at the photos of his mother. She'd had green eyes. Striking green eyes that Connor had inherited, along with his daughter. Eyes that looked familiar somehow. He shook his head. He was tired, seeing connections that weren't there. Dorothy was just a homeless woman Madison had befriended. Nothing more. Tomorrow they'd help her find proper resources and move on with their lives. But deep down, something told him tomorrow was going to change everything. Connor woke at 6 like always. Years of construction work had trained his body to rise with the sun. He made coffee, started breakfast, planning to make enough for Dorothy too. Madison was still asleep, her door covered with hand-drawn signs that said things like, Madison's room, enter at your own risk, and soccer star in training. He decided to check on their guest, make sure she'd been warm enough during the night. He grabbed a plate of scrambled eggs, toast, and a cup of coffee, and headed to the garage. Maybe he'd been too hard on Madison. Maybe letting Dorothy stay one night was exactly the right thing to do. The November morning sun was just starting to come up, casting golden light through the garage window. It filtered through the dust particles in the air, creating an almost ethereal glow. Dorothy was sitting on the makeshift bed, folding the blankets with careful precision, the movements of someone who'd learned to respect any kindness shown to them. When she heard the door open, she looked up. And that's when it happened. That's when Connor saw her face in clear, direct morning light for the first time. Really saw her. Not in the shadows of evening or the darkness of night, but in the honest, revealing light of day. The coffee mug in his hand slipped from his fingers. It fell in slow motion, or maybe time just stopped. It shattered on the concrete floor, coffee splashing everywhere, ceramic pieces scattering. No, that's not possible. His voice came out strangled, disbelieving. His heart was pounding so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. His vision tunneled. His hands started shaking. Dorothy stood up slowly, and Connor saw it. Everything he'd been missing in the darkness. The shape of her nose. The curve of her jaw. The way she held her left shoulder slightly higher than her right, because of an old injury. And those eyes. Those unmistakable green eyes that looked back at him from the mirror every single morning. Connor? Dorothy's voice broke, cracked under the weight of 15 years of silence. It's been a long time. Connor couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't process what he was seeing. Because the homeless woman in his garage, the stranger his daughter had begged him to help, wasn't a stranger at all. Mum? The word came out like a prayer and a curse all at once. Because this couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. His mother had disappeared 15 years ago. Just vanished into thin air when Connor was 22 years old. No note. No explanation. No phone call. Nobody ever found. The police had investigated. They'd searched for months. They'd interviewed everyone who knew her. But Evelyn Branson had simply ceased to exist. After 5 years of nothing, she'd been declared legally dead. Connor had buried an empty casket. He'd grieved. He'd moved on as best he could. And now here she was. Homeless. Broken. Living behind a middle school. Being rescued by the granddaughter she'd never met. Connor's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the garage floor, right in the spilled coffee, surrounded by broken ceramic, and just stared. His mother. His dead mother. Alive. I know you have questions, Dorothy. No, Evelyn said quietly, her voice trembling. I know you're angry. I know this doesn't make sense. Angry? Connor's voice rose, echoing in the garage. Angry? You've been gone for 15 years. 15 years, Mom. Dad died thinking you'd been murdered or kidnapped or God knows what. I buried an empty casket. I grieved for you. I thought you were dead. I know. I'm so sorry, Connor. I'm so sorry. Sorry? Where have you been? Why did you leave? Why didn't you come back? Why didn't you call? Do you have any idea what you put us through? Evelyn sank back down onto the blankets, her face crumbling. She looked older than 53. The streets had aged her decades. Her hands shook as she pressed them to her face, trying to hold herself together. I had a breakdown, Connor. A complete mental breakdown. I'd been struggling for years with depression, anxiety, things I didn't tell anyone about because I thought I could handle it on my own. I thought I was strong enough, but it kept getting worse. The weight of it, the darkness, it was suffocating me. Her voice dropped to a whisper, and one day, I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't be a wife. Couldn't be a mother. Couldn't even be a person. I felt like I was drowning, and everyone would be better off if I just disappeared. So you just left? You just walked away from your family? From Dad? From me? Evelyn was crying now, tears streaming down her weathered face. I drove to the coast. I was going to drive my car into the ocean. End it all. I sat there for hours, watching the waves, working up the courage. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't even do that right. She looked at her son with hollow, haunted eyes. So instead, I just started driving. I ended up in Portland. I checked into a cheap motel with what little cash I had in my wallet. And I told myself I'd go back once I felt better. Once I got my head straight. Once I could be the person you both deserved. Connor sat there on the cold concrete, listening to his mother explain the inexplicable. And he felt like he was drowning too. Drowning in anger and confusion, and grief and disbelief. But I didn't get better, Evelyn continued. I got worse. Much worse. The depression was so heavy, Connor. Like drowning in cement. Every day was a battle just to breathe. I couldn't make myself pick up the phone. Couldn't make myself get in the car. Couldn't make myself come home. And then weeks turned into months. And months turned into years. And I told myself you were both better off without me. That I'd already destroyed your lives enough. Connor stared at his mother, this ghost from his past, and he felt 15 years of grief and anger bubbling up inside him like a volcano about to erupt. You disappeared for 15 years because you were depressed. That's your explanation? Do you have any idea how insane that sounds? Evelyn nodded, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of Connor's old sweatshirt. I know it sounds insane. Mental illness isn't rational, Connor. It doesn't make sense to people who haven't experienced it. I lost everything. Lost my ID when someone stole my purse in Portland. Lost what little money I had. Lost my grip on reality. I ended up on the streets, and once you're there, it's almost impossible to climb back out. She looked at hands, weathered and scarred from years of survival. I've been homeless for 12 years now. Drifting from city to city. I didn't even know where I was most of the time. Some days I couldn't remember my own name. Some days I couldn't remember that I'd ever had a different life. A family. A home. Connor felt tears streaming down his face. He was angry, so incredibly angry. But underneath the anger was a pain so deep it threatened to swallow him whole. Dad died, Mom. Did you know that? Dad died 7 years ago. Heart attack, they said. But I know it was heartbreak. He never stopped looking for you. Never stopped hoping you'd come home. He died not knowing what happened to you. He died thinking his wife had been murdered or trafficked or lying dead in a ditch somewhere. Evelyn's face crumbled. She made a sound like a wounded animal. Robert's dead? Yeah. He's dead. And you weren't there. You weren't there for the funeral. You weren't there when I had to clean out the house we grew up in. You weren't there when I got married, or when Jessica died, or when Madison was born. You weren't there for any of it. I didn't know. Oh God, Robert. My Robert. Connor stood up, pacing the garage, running his hands through his hair. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. My mother has been homeless this entire time, living on the streets while I thought she was dead. How? How did you end up here? In this city? Behind Madison's school? Evelyn looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. I drift. I've been through dozens of cities. I came here about 2 months ago. I found a spot behind the school because it had an overhang that kept the rain off. I've been there for a few weeks. And then yesterday, this beautiful girl sat down next to me during her lunch break. She smiled through her tears. She didn't look at me like I was trash. She didn't ignore me or pretend I wasn't there. She talked to me like I was a human being. She shared her lunch with me. She told me about her life, about her dad who she loves so much, about how her mum died when she was little, but her dad makes everything okay. Evelyn's voice broke, and when she said her dad's name was Connor Branson, I thought I was hallucinating. I thought my mind was finally completely gone. Because what are the odds? What are the impossible astronomical odds that my granddaughter, a child I didn't even know existed, would be the one to show me kindness? Connor sat back down, his legs too shaky to support him. This is too much. This is all too much. I don't expect forgiveness, Connor. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that I never stopped loving you. Even when I couldn't function. Even when I couldn't come home. Even when I convinced myself you were better off without me. I loved you. I love you. I never stopped being your mother. Even when I stopped being able to act like one. Connor looked at this woman. This broken shell of the mother he'd known, and he didn't know what to feel. Anger, relief, confusion, grief. of it swirled together into something he couldn't name. The daughter you never met. Madison, your granddaughter. She's 12 years old and she's never had a grandmother. Because we thought you were dead. We had a funeral for you. An empty casket. I gave a eulogy. I cried over a grave that didn't have a body in it. Evelyn was sobbing now, her whole body shaking. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. I know it doesn't give you back the years. I know it doesn't bring Robert back. But I'm sorry. The garage fell silent except for Evelyn's crying and Connor's ragged breathing. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. A car drove by. The world kept turning, indifferent to the impossible reunion happening in this small garage. Connor didn't know how long they sat there in silence. Minutes, hours, time felt meaningless. Finally, he spoke, his voice hollow. I don't know what to do with this. I don't know how to process this. You've been dead for 15 years. And now you're not. And you're homeless. And my daughter brought you home like a stray cat. And I don't know what the hell to do. Evelyn looked at him with those green eyes, the eyes he saw in the mirror, the eyes his daughter had inherited. You don't have to do anything, Connor. I'll leave. Right now. I'll take my things and go, and you never have to see me again. You can go back to your life and pretend this never happened. Connor almost said yes, almost told her to leave and never come back. It would be easier, cleaner. He could protect Madison from this complicated, messy truth. But then he thought about what Madison had said last night. Everyone deserves someone who cares if they're okay. No, Connor said finally. You're not leaving. Not yet. We need to figure this out. But I need time. I need time to think, to process, to figure out how to tell Madison that the homeless woman she rescued is actually her dead grandmother. Evelyn nodded. Whatever you need. I'll do whatever you need. The back door opened. Connor and Evelyn both froze. Madison appeared in her pajamas, the ones with soccer balls all over them, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Her hair was sticking up in all directions. Dad, I heard something break. Is everything okay? She stopped when she saw her father sitting on the floor, surrounded by broken mug pieces and spilled coffee, tears streaming down his face, and Dorothy standing there, looking like she wanted to disappear into the walls. Dad? What's wrong? Did something happen to Grandma Dorothy? Connor couldn't speak. How do you explain this to a 12-year-old? How do you tell your daughter that the homeless woman she'd rescued was actually the grandmother she'd never known existed? The grandmother who'd been declared dead years before Madison was even born. Madison walked closer, her face etched with concern. She knelt down next to her father. Dad, you're scaring me. What's going on? Why are you crying? Connor looked at his mother, then at his daughter. These two people, separated by years of pain and loss and impossible circumstances, now standing in his garage because of a twist of fate. So unlikely it felt like divine intervention or cosmic joke. He couldn't tell which. Maddie, sweetheart, Connor finally managed, his voice shaking. Dorothy isn't just someone who needed help. She's not just a homeless woman. She's my mother, your grandmother. Madison blinked, then blinked again, her face scrunched up in confusion. What? My mother disappeared when I was 22 years old. We thought she was dead. We had a funeral. But she's been homeless this whole time, living on the streets. And you brought her home. Madison looked at Dorothy with wide eyes, processing this impossible information. "You're my grandma? My real grandma?" Evelyn nodded, unable to speak through her tears. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm your grandmother. I'm Evelyn. Evelyn Branson. But Dad said you were dead. He showed me pictures. We visited your grave." "The grave is empty, baby," Connor said softly. "We never found a body. After 5 years, they declared her legally dead. But she was alive the whole time." Madison stood very still, her mind working through this revelation. Connor could see her processing, connecting dots, trying to make sense of the impossible. Finally, she spoke, her voice small and confused. "So you left? You left Dad and Grandpa Robert, and you've been gone this whole time?" Evelyn knelt down so she was at Madison's eye level. "Yes, I left. I made a terrible choice. I was very sick in my mind, and I thought everyone would be better off without me. I was wrong. So wrong. I hurt people I loved. I missed out on watching your dad grow up. I missed meeting you. I lost 15 years I can never get back." Madison's eyes filled with tears. "That's really sad. You must have been so scared. So alone." And then Madison did something that shocked both Connor and Evelyn. Something that proved she had a heart bigger than most adults would ever have. She walked over to Evelyn and wrapped her thin arms around her grandmother and held on tight. "You must have been so lonely. I'm so sorry, Grandma Evelyn." Evelyn collapsed into the hug, sobbing like her heart was breaking all over again. But this time, the tears were different. Not tears of despair, but tears of disbelief that this child, this beautiful, compassionate child, was offering forgiveness without being asked. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry for all the time we lost. I'm sorry I wasn't there for your dad. I'm sorry I never got to meet you until now." Madison pulled back and looked at her father. "Dad, we have to help her. We have to help Grandma Evelyn get better." "Maddie, it's not that simple. She's been gone for 15 years. This is complicated. I know it's complicated, but she's here now. And she's family. We don't give up on family, right? You taught me that." Connor looked at his 12-year-old daughter, this wise, compassionate soul he'd somehow managed to raise right, and he realized she was teaching him something now. She was teaching him about grace, about second chances, about choosing love over anger. "You're right," he said quietly. "You're absolutely right." Madison grabbed both their hands. "Come on, let's go inside. I'll make breakfast. Grandma Evelyn, do you like pancakes?" "I make really good pancakes. Dad taught me, and he learned from his mom. So I guess that means you taught him, which means you kind of taught me too." Evelyn laughed through her tears. "I love pancakes. I used to make them for Connor every Sunday morning when he was your age." Connor felt something shift in his chest, a memory he'd buried. Sunday morning pancakes with his mother, her singing off-key in the kitchen, the smell of butter and maple syrup. A lifetime ago. "I remember," he said softly. "I remember those pancakes." Evelyn met his eyes. "You do?" "Yeah, Mom, I do." They moved into the kitchen. Madison busied herself making pancakes, humming while she worked. Connor made fresh coffee. Evelyn sat at the table, looking around at this home her son had built, this life she'd missed entirely. The kitchen was small but cozy. School artwork covered the refrigerator, held up by magnets from various places. A calendar on the wall showed Madison's soccer schedule in blue, Connor's work shifts in black. There were photos everywhere. Madison as a baby. Madison's first day of school. Madison winning a soccer trophy. Connor and Madison at the beach. At the zoo. At her 5th grade graduation. 15 years of life Evelyn had missed, documented in photographs on the walls. She studied each one, memorizing her son's face as it aged, getting to know her granddaughter through frozen moments in time. Madison set a plate of pancakes in front of Evelyn. They were slightly burned on one side, but Evelyn looked at them like they were a gourmet meal. She took a bite and closed her eyes. "These are delicious, sweetheart. Just like the ones I used to make." Madison beamed with pride. "Dad taught me. He said his mom taught him, and someday I'll teach my kids. And it'll be like you're there even if you're not." The words hung in the air, heavy with unintended meaning, because Evelyn hadn't been there, and now she was. And nobody knew quite how to navigate this impossible situation. Connor cleared his throat. "Mom, I need to understand. After you left Portland, what happened? How did you end up homeless?" Evelyn set down her fork, her appetite suddenly gone. "The depression got worse. Much worse. I ran out of money at the motel. I couldn't make myself call anyone. Couldn't make myself ask for help. The idea of facing you, of facing Robert, of explaining where I'd been and why I'd left, it paralyzed me. So what did you do?" "I started sleeping in my car. Then someone stole the car. I ended up in a shelter for a while, but there were rules, schedules, and I couldn't follow them. My mind was too scattered. So I ended up on the streets. And once you're there, it's almost impossible to climb back out." Madison listened intently, her young mind trying to understand adult problems. "But why didn't you go to a hospital? Don't they help people who are sad?" Evelyn smiled sadly. "They do, honey. But I didn't think I deserved help. That's what depression does. It convinces you that you're worthless, that you're beyond saving, that everyone would be better off if you just disappeared. I believed those lies for a very long time." Connor ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Evelyn recognized from when he was a boy and frustrated with homework. "But you're my mother. How could you think we'd be better off without you?" "Because I'd already failed you. I'd already left. In my mind, coming back would just cause more pain. I convinced myself that you'd moved on, that you were happy without me. The longer I stayed away, the easier it became to believe I'd never really had that life at all." "But Dad never moved on," Connor said, his voice tight. "He lived for you until the day he died. He never gave up hope." Evelyn's face crumbled. "Robert. God, Robert. How did he die? Tell me it wasn't painful." "Heart attack. He was at home, working in the garden. Mrs. Chen from next door found him. The doctors said it was quick. He didn't suffer." But Evelyn knew the truth. Robert had suffered. He'd suffered for 7 years, not knowing what happened to his wife. And that suffering had killed him just as surely as any disease. "I killed him," she whispered. "I killed him by leaving." Madison reached across the table and grabbed her grandmother's hand. "No. Sadness killed him. Missing you killed him. That's not the same as you killing him." Connor looked at his daughter in amazement. "When did you get so wise, kiddo?" "You taught me. You always say that mental illness is real, and it's not anyone's fault. You said that when we learned about it in health class." Connor had said that. After one of Madison's classmates had attempted suicide, the school had brought in counselors to talk to the kids. Connor had reinforced those lessons at home, teaching Madison that mental health was just as important as physical health. He'd never imagined those lessons would apply to his own mother. "Mom," Connor said carefully, "if you've been sick this whole time, have you ever gotten treatment? Medication? Therapy?" Evelyn shook her head. "How? I don't have insurance. Don't have ID. Don't have money. The free clinics are overwhelmed. I tried a few times over the years, but the waiting lists were months long, and by then I drifted to a different city. The system isn't built for people like me. We fall through the cracks. Then we need to get you into the system, Connor said. We need to get you help. Real help. This isn't something that just goes away on its own. Connor, I don't have anything. No identification, no birth certificate, no social security card. I don't legally exist anymore. Then we'll fix that. We'll start from scratch. Birth certificate, ID, social security card. We'll rebuild your legal existence. And then we'll get you into treatment. Evelyn looked at her son with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Why would you do that? After everything I've done? Because you're my mother. Because Madison's right. We don't give up on family. And because I spent 15 years wishing I could have you back. Now I do. It's complicated and messy, and I'm angrier than I've ever been in my life, that you're here. And I'm not losing you again. After breakfast, Connor made a decision. He called his boss and told him he needed a few days off. Family emergency. His boss, a gruff man named Dale Morrison, surprised him by immediately agreeing. Family comes first, Branson. Take the time you need. Then Connor started making other calls. To social services. To legal aid. To mental health clinics. He navigated bureaucracy and waiting lists and endless hold times, determined to find help for his mother. Madison sat with Evelyn, showing her photo albums, filling in the years they'd missed. Evelyn cried looking at pictures of Connor's wedding to Jessica, a woman she'd never meet. She cried seeing baby Madison. First steps. First day of school. Birthday parties. Soccer games. A lifetime captured in photographs. You've done such a beautiful job raising her, Evelyn said, watching Madison explain each picture with enthusiasm. Jessica would be so proud. I hope so. I try. Some days I have no idea what I'm doing. That's parenthood. Nobody knows what they're doing. You just love them and hope for the best. Connor hung up from his 7th phone call and joined them at the table. He looked exhausted but determined. Okay. I found a clinic that specializes in treating homeless individuals with mental health issues. They can see you next week. It's not perfect, but it's a start. Evelyn stared at him. You did that? Just now? In an hour? I made a lot of calls. Pulled some strings. Used the Branson charm. Madison giggled. Dad doesn't have charm. He has determination. It's different. Connor smiled despite the heaviness of the situation. Thanks for that ringing endorsement, kiddo. But there's a problem, Connor continued. They need identification. At minimum, a birth certificate. Mum, do you remember where you were born? We need to start there. Evelyn closed her eyes, trying to pull information from a mind that had been foggy for so long. St. Mary's Hospital. In Denver. November 12, 1972. Connor wrote it down. Okay, that's a start. We can request a copy of your birth certificate. Once we have that, we can get other documents. It'll take time, but we'll get there. Why are you doing this? Evelyn asked again, genuinely confused. I abandoned you. I destroyed our family. Why are you helping me? Connor sat down next to his mother. He was quiet for a long moment, gathering his thoughts. Because for 15 years I've had a hole in my life. A mom-shaped hole. And I've been angry about it. So angry. But underneath the anger was grief. And underneath the grief was love. I never stopped loving you, even when I thought you were dead. He looked her in the eyes. And now you're here. You're alive. You're sick, but you're alive. And I have a choice. I can turn my back on you, let you go back to the streets, tell myself you made your bed, and now you have to lie in it. Or I can choose to help, to try, to give you a second chance. Evelyn was crying again. She seemed to do nothing but cry. 15 years of tears all coming out at once. I don't deserve a second chance. Maybe not, but Madison deserves a grandmother. And I deserve answers. And you deserve to not die alone on the streets. So we're doing this. All of us. Together. Madison clapped her hands. This is exactly like that movie. The one where the family finds their lost grandpa and helps him remember who he is. This isn't a movie, sweetheart, Connor said gently. This is real life. It's going to be hard. There's going to be setbacks. It's not going to be a perfect happy ending. But it could be a happy middle, right? Madison said hopefully. That's what you always say. We can't control the ending, but we can make the middle as good as possible. Connor hugged his daughter. That's exactly right. A happy middle. Over the next few hours they made a plan. Evelyn would stay in the garage for now, until they could figure out something more permanent. Connor would help her navigate the system to get ID and medical care. Madison would continue being Madison, bringing light and hope to a situation that desperately needed both. But first, Connor said, we need to talk about something important. Mum, Dad's buried at Riverside Cemetery. Do you want to visit his grave? Evelyn's face went pale. I don't know if I can. How do I face his grave, knowing I'm the reason he's in it? You're not the reason, Connor said firmly. He had a heart attack. That's not your fault. But the heartbreak was my fault. Connor couldn't argue with that. It was true. His father had died of a broken heart, even if the death certificate said myocardial infarction. Okay. We don't have to go today. But eventually you should. He deserves that. Evelyn nodded. Eventually. By the afternoon, word had started to spread. Mrs. Chen from next door had seen Evelyn through the window and recognized her immediately. She'd known Evelyn before the disappearance, had been friends with her. Mrs. Chen knocked on the door, holding a casserole dish. Her hands were shaking. Connor, I need to know. Is that Evelyn? Is that really her? Connor invited her in. Mrs. Chen stopped in her tracks when she saw Evelyn sitting at the kitchen table. The two women stared at each other across 15 years of absence. Evelyn, Mrs. Chen whispered, we thought you were dead. I know, Helen. I'm sorry. Mrs. Chen set down the casserole and walked over. She studied Evelyn's face, taking in the changes, the aging, the hardship written in every line. Then she did something unexpected. She slapped Evelyn across the face. The sound echoed in the small kitchen. Madison gasped. Connor stood up, but Mrs. Chen wasn't done. That's for Robert, she said, tears streaming down her face. He loved you until his dying breath, and you let him die, not knowing what happened to you. That's unforgivable, Evelyn. Then Mrs. Chen pulled Evelyn into a fierce hug. But I'm glad you're alive. God help me, I'm glad you're alive. Evelyn sobbed into Mrs. Chen's shoulder. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Helen. Sorry doesn't bring Robert back. Sorry doesn't give Connor back his mother. But it's a start. Mrs. Chen pulled back and looked at Connor. You're helping her? I'm trying. Good. She's sick. Mentally sick. I could see it even before she left. But I didn't know how to help. Mental health wasn't something we talked about back then. We suffered in silence. She turned back to Evelyn. You're going to get treatment. Real treatment. And you're going to work hard to get better. For Connor. For Madison. For Robert's memory. I will. I promise. Over the next few hours, more neighbors stopped by. Some out of curiosity. Some out of genuine concern. The story of the woman who'd returned from the dead spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Some people were kind. Others were judgmental. One neighbor, Mr. Patterson, actually told Connor he was making a mistake helping someone who'd abandoned their family. She made her choice 15 years ago. Now she has to live with it. Connor looked at Mr. Patterson with steel in his eyes. Everyone deserves a second chance. Even people who make terrible mistakes. After Mr. Patterson left, Madison tugged on her father's shirt. Dad, why are people being so mean? Don't they understand Grandma was sick? Some people don't understand mental illness, sweetheart. They think it's a choice. They think people can just decide to get better. But it doesn't work that way. That's dumb. Yeah, it is. That evening, Connor's phone rang. It was his old friend Jake Riley, someone he'd grown up with. Jake had heard the news through the neighborhood grapevine. Dude, is it true? Your mom's alive? Yeah, she's alive. Holy shit, that's insane. Are you okay? I don't know. I don't know what I am. You want to grab a beer? Talk about it? Can't. I need to stay here. But thanks for calling. After he hung up, Connor realized how isolated he'd become. He had friends, but not close ones. He had neighbors, but kept them at arm's length. He'd been so focused on raising Madison and working 2 jobs that he'd forgotten to build a support system for himself. Maybe that needed to change. A week later, Connor drove his mother to her first appointment at the Riverside Mental Health Clinic. Madison was at school. It was just the 2 of them, sitting in awkward silence in the truck. The clinic was in a run-down building on the edge of town. The waiting room was full of people who looked like they'd been forgotten by society. Homeless individuals. People with obvious mental health issues. People at the end of their rope. Evelyn fit right in, and that broke Connor's heart. They waited for 45 minutes before a therapist called Evelyn's name. Dr. Stephanie Martinez was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a gentle demeanor. She specialized in trauma and severe depression. Hello, Evelyn. I'm Dr. Martinez. Why don't you come back with me, and we'll talk? Connor started to stand, but Dr. Martinez shook her head. This first session should be just Evelyn and me. You can join us in future sessions if you'd both like. Connor sat back down. Evelyn looked terrified. Connor, I don't know if I can do this. You can. You're stronger than you think. I'll be right here when you're done. Evelyn disappeared into the back. Connor sat in that waiting room for an hour, staring at outdated magazines, listening to people cough and cry, and sometimes yell. This was the system. This was how America treated its most vulnerable. When Evelyn finally emerged, her eyes were red from crying, but she looked lighter somehow, like she'd set down a burden she'd been carrying for years. How'd it go? Connor asked. Hard, but good. Dr. Martinez is nice. She didn't judge me. She just listened. They drove home in silence. But this time, the silence felt different. Not awkward, more contemplative. Finally, Evelyn spoke. She wants to see me twice a week, and she's prescribing medication. Antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. She said it might take a few tries to find the right combination, but she thinks she can help me. That's good news, Mom. Connor, I need you to know something. This is going to be a long process. I'm not going to wake up one day and be the mother you remember. That person is gone. I'm different now, broken in ways that might never fully heal. Connor gripped the steering wheel tighter. Then we'll learn to love the person you are now. Evelyn looked at her son, at this man who turned out so much better than she deserved. How did you turn out so good? How did I raise someone with such a big heart? Connor smiled sadly. You did. You raised me for 22 years before you left. You taught me kindness and compassion and how to help people. I didn't learn those things from nowhere. I learned them from you and Dad. I don't remember being that person. I do. And maybe with help you'll remember too. When they got home, Madison was already there. Mrs. Chun had picked her up from school. Madison ran out to greet them, full of questions and excitement. How'd it go, Grandma? Did you like the doctor? Are they going to help you? Evelyn knelt down and hugged her granddaughter. They're going to try, sweetheart. It's going to take time, but they're going to try. That night, after Madison went to bed, Connor and Evelyn sat at the kitchen table. Connor had made tea, his mother's favorite, Earl Grey with honey. I've been thinking, Connor said. The garage isn't a long-term solution. It's fine for now, but you need something better, something more permanent. Connor, I can't ask you to do more than you already have. You're not asking, I'm offering. I've been looking into options. There's a transitional housing facility on Oak Street. It's specifically for people recovering from homelessness and mental illness. They have support services, case managers, job training. Once you have your ID sorted out and you've been in treatment for a few months, you could apply. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears for what felt like the millionth time. You'd really do that? Help me get into a place like that. Mum, I'm not going to let you go back to the streets. Ever. You're my mother. You're Madison's grandmother. We're going to figure this out together. What did I do to deserve a son like you? Connor thought about that question, about all the ways his mother had failed him, and all the ways she'd shaped him. I learned from you. The good parts, before the illness took over. You taught me to help people, to see them as human beings, not problems. You taught me that everyone deserves dignity and respect. He smiled. So really, you created your own rescue. You raised me to be the kind of person who wouldn't abandon you, even when I had every right to. The next 3 months were some of the hardest of Connor's life. Progress wasn't linear. Some days Evelyn seemed better, more present, more like the mother he remembered. Other days, the depression was so heavy she could barely get out of bed. Connor learned to navigate this new reality. He learned about medication side effects and therapy techniques. He learned about triggers and coping mechanisms. He learned that mental illness wasn't something you fixed. It was something you managed, day by day, sometimes hour by hour. Madison was remarkable through it all. She visited her grandmother every day after school. Sometimes they'd work on puzzles together. Sometimes Madison would just sit and do her homework while Evelyn rested. Sometimes Madison would tell stories about school, filling the garage with chatter when Evelyn couldn't find words to respond. One particularly bad day, Connor found Madison sitting in the garage, holding Evelyn's hand while his mother cried. I'm sorry you have to see me like this, baby, Evelyn sobbed. You shouldn't have to take care of a broken grandmother. You're not broken, Grandma. You're just hurt. Dad says hurt things need extra care. Like when I broke my arm and you had to be really gentle with it. Your brain is broken like my arm was broken. It just needs time to heal. Connor stood in the doorway, watching his 12-year-old daughter understand things most adults couldn't grasp. Where had she learned such wisdom? From him? From Jessica? Or was it just who she was at her core? The paperwork for Evelyn's identification finally came through. Birth certificate, then social security card, then state ID. Each document was a small victory, proof that Evelyn Branson legally existed again. With the ID, they could apply for Medicaid. With Medicaid, they could afford better treatment. With better treatment, Evelyn started to improve. Not quickly, not dramatically, but gradually, like spring thawing after a brutal winter. Dr. Martinez wanted to add family therapy to Evelyn's treatment plan. Connor, Evelyn, and Madison started meeting with her every other week. Those sessions were brutal. They talked about abandonment and grief and anger and forgiveness. Connor, Dr. Martinez said during one session. You're carrying a lot of resentment. That's natural and understandable. But holding on to it is hurting you more than it's hurting your mother. I know I should forgive her. I want to forgive her. But every time I think I have, something reminds me of what we lost. What Dad lost. And I'm angry all over again. Dr. Martinez nodded. Forgiveness isn't a one-time event. It's a choice you make repeatedly. Some days you'll feel forgiving. Other days you'll feel angry. Both are valid. Evelyn spoke up, her voice quiet. Connor, I don't expect you to forgive me. What I did was unforgivable. I just hope that someday you can make peace with it. With what happened. With who I am now versus who I was then. Connor looked at his mother, really looked at her. She'd gained weight in the past 3 months. The medication and regular meals had helped. Her hair was clean and cut. Her clothes fit properly. She looked more like a person and less like a ghost. But the biggest change was in her eyes. The emptiness was slowly being replaced by something else. Not quite hope yet, but maybe the foundation of hope. The possibility of it. I'm trying, Mom. I really am. That's all I ask. Madison, surprisingly, had her own struggles. She'd been so focused on helping her grandmother that she'd neglected her own feelings. One night, she broke down crying at dinner. What's wrong, sweetheart? Connor asked, alarmed. I'm just sad. I'm sad that Grandma was alone for so long. I'm sad that Grandpa Robert died without knowing she was okay. I'm sad that we lost all those years. And I'm sad that some people are mean to her because they don't understand. Connor pulled his daughter into a hug. Connor held Madison tight, feeling her small body shake with sobs. His brave, compassionate daughter had been carrying the weight of this situation on her shoulders, and he hadn't fully realized it until now. It's okay to be sad, baby. This is a sad situation. You don't have to be strong all the time. But I want to help. I want to make it better. You are helping. You're helping more than you know. But you're also 12 years old. And you're allowed to just be a kid sometimes. You don't have to fix everything. Madison pulled back and wiped her eyes. But what if I stop helping and Grandma gets worse? That's not how it works. Grandma's healing isn't dependent on you. She has doctors and medication and therapy. Your job is just to love her. That's all. Over the next few weeks, Connor made sure Madison got her own time with Dr. Martinez. The therapist helped Madison process her feelings, helped her understand that she could love her grandmother without taking responsibility for her grandmother's recovery. Meanwhile, Evelyn was working hard. She attended every therapy session. She took her medication religiously. She started journaling, something Dr. Martinez had suggested. She wrote about the years she'd lost, the guilt she carried, the hope she was slowly building. One evening, she showed Connor her journal. I want you to read this. I want you to understand what was going through my head when I left. Connor took the journal hesitantly. Are you sure? I'm sure. You deserve answers. Real answers. Not just the surface explanations I've been giving you. That night, after Madison went to bed, Connor read his mother's words. Page after page of pain, of suffocating depression, of days when she couldn't remember why living mattered, of the voice in her head that told her constantly that she was a burden, that everyone would be happier without her, that disappearing was an act of love, not abandonment. He read about the day she left, how she'd planned to drive into the ocean, how she'd sat in her car for 3 hours, working up the courage, how she couldn't do it, couldn't actually take her own life, so she just kept driving instead. He read about the years on the streets, the hunger, the cold, the fear, the times she was assaulted, the times she considered ending it all but couldn't find the energy even for that. The way she'd slowly lost pieces of herself until she couldn't remember who she'd been before. And he read about the day Madison had sat down next to her behind the school. How it had been the first time in years someone had looked at her like she was human. How Madison had shared her sandwich and talked about her father with so much love that Evelyn had felt something crack open inside her chest. By the time Connor finished reading, he was crying. Not angry tears, not even sad tears, just tears of understanding, of finally, truly comprehending what his mother had endured. The next morning, he went to the garage before work. Evelyn was already awake, sitting up in bed, looking nervous. "Did you read it?" "All of it." "And?" Connor sat down on the edge of the makeshift bed. "And I'm sorry. I'm sorry you suffered like that. I'm sorry you felt so alone that disappearing seemed like the only option. I'm sorry the system failed you. I'm sorry I didn't see how bad things were before you left." Evelyn shook her head. "You were 22. How could you have known? I hid it from everyone. From your father. From my friends. From myself even. Maybe, but I'm still sorry. For all of it." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Connor spoke again. "I'm not saying I've completely forgiven you. I don't think I'm there yet. But I understand now. And understanding feels like a step toward forgiveness." Evelyn started crying. Again, Connor was starting to realize that crying was just part of this process. For all of them. "That's more than I deserve, Connor. Thank you." When Thanksgiving rolled around again, almost a year after Evelyn had been found, Connor made a decision. They would celebrate together. As a family. The family they were now, not the family they used to be. Evelyn had been living in the transitional housing facility on Oak Street for 2 months now. She had her own small apartment. She was working part-time at the library, shelving books. She was stable on her medication. She was attending therapy twice a week. She wasn't cured, would never be cured, but she was managing. She was living. Connor and Madison picked her up Thanksgiving morning. Evelyn was dressed nicely, in clothes Madison had helped her pick out from the thrift store. She'd put on makeup. She looked nervous and hopeful and terrified all at once. When they got to the house, Evelyn stopped at the front door. "Connor, I've never been inside your home. I've only ever been in the garage." Connor realized she was right. For all these months, Evelyn had stayed in the garage, like she didn't deserve to enter the actual house. Well, that changes today. "Welcome home, Mom." He opened the door. Madison had decorated. There were hand-drawn turkeys taped to the walls. A centerpiece made of construction paper leaves and glitter. Place cards at the table with everyone's names written in Madison's careful handwriting. Evelyn walked through the small house slowly, taking everything in. The photos on the walls. The lived-in furniture. The evidence of a life built without her. She ran her fingers along the back of the couch, touched the frame of a family photo, stood in the doorway of Madison's room. "You have a beautiful home," she said finally. "You've built a beautiful life." "We're building it," Connor corrected. "All of us. Together." They spent the day cooking. Evelyn remembered the old family recipes. She taught Madison how to make her famous sweet potato casserole, the one Connor had loved as a child. She showed her the trick to getting the perfect crust on the turkey. Madison soaked it all up, asking a million questions, learning about her grandmother through cooking lessons and stories. Evelyn told her about Connor as a little boy, about how he'd refused to eat vegetables until she started making them into smiley faces, about how he'd wanted to be an astronaut and had made her call him Commander Connor for an entire year. Connor listened to his mother's stories and remembered. He'd forgotten so many of these details. The depression and disappearance had overshadowed the good memories. But now they were coming back, not replacing the pain, but existing alongside it. Mrs. Chun came over for dessert. She'd been a steady presence in Evelyn's recovery, visiting her at the facility, taking her to doctor's appointments when Connor had to work. The two women had rebuilt their friendship slowly, carefully. "You look good, Evelyn," Mrs. Chun said. "Really good. I feel good. Better than I have in 15 years. Not perfect, but better. That's all we can ask for. Progress, not perfection." As they sat down to eat, Connor asked everyone to share what they were thankful for. It had become their tradition. Madison went first. "I'm thankful for second chances. I'm thankful that sometimes lost things can be found. I'm thankful for Dad, who taught me that helping people matters more than judging them. And I'm thankful for Grandma Evelyn, who reminds me every day that it's never too late to choose hope." Mrs. Chen went next. "I'm thankful for this beautiful family. I'm thankful that Evelyn is alive and getting better. I'm thankful that Robert's memory is honored by the love in this room. And I'm thankful that Connor had the courage to help, even when it was hard." Evelyn's turn. She took a shaky breath. "I'm thankful for my son, who saved me even though I didn't deserve saving. I'm thankful for my granddaughter, who showed me kindness when I was invisible to everyone else. I'm thankful for therapy and medication and second chances. I'm thankful that mental illness doesn't have to be a death sentence. And I'm thankful that I lived long enough to be here, in this moment, with the people I love." Finally, Connor. He looked around the table at this assembled group. His daughter. His mother. His neighbor who'd become like family. This wasn't the Thanksgiving he'd imagined a year ago. It was messier, more complicated, more painful, but also more real, more meaningful. I'm thankful for Madison, who has a heart bigger than anyone I've ever known. I'm thankful for Mrs. Chun, who's been our rock through all of this. And I'm thankful for my mother. He looked at Evelyn. "I'm thankful that you're alive. I'm thankful that we have a chance to rebuild what was broken. I'm thankful that I get to know you again, even though it's hard and complicated. And sometimes I still don't know how to feel. But mostly, I'm thankful that Madison asked me to help a stranger in need, and that stranger turned out to be the person I've been grieving for 15 years. Evelyn was crying. Happy tears this time. "Thank you, Connor. Thank you for not giving up on me." They held hands around the table, this makeshift family built from loss and pain and impossible circumstances. And for a moment, everything felt right. Not perfect, not healed, but right. After dinner, Madison pulled out a photo album she'd been working on. It was titled, "Our Family, Old and New." She'd filled it with photos of Evelyn from before she disappeared. Pictures Connor had kept in boxes, and she'd added new photos. Evelyn at her first therapy session. Evelyn at the library where she worked. Evelyn and Madison making pancakes. Connor and Evelyn having coffee. A visual record of a family being rebuilt, one moment at a time. "This is for you, Grandma," Madison said, handing her the album. "So you never forget that you belong here, with us." Evelyn clutched the album to her chest. "I won't forget, baby. Never again." 2 years later, Evelyn moved out of the transitional housing facility and into her own apartment. A real apartment with a lease and furniture and plants in the window. She was working full-time at the library now. She was stable on her medication. She still went to therapy, but only once a week now instead of twice. She and Connor had rebuilt their relationship slowly, carefully, brick by brick. Some days were harder than others. Some conversations brought up old pain that neither of them knew quite how to handle. But they kept showing up. They kept trying. Madison was 14 now, a freshman in high school. She still visited her grandmother every week. They had their own traditions. Wednesday afternoon tea, Sunday morning pancakes, Saturday trips to the library where Evelyn worked. One Sunday morning, while making pancakes together, Madison asked a question that had been on her mind. "Grandma, do you ever regret it? Being found, coming back?" Evelyn thought about it carefully. She'd learned not to give easy answers to hard questions. "Sometimes I do. Sometimes the guilt is so overwhelming that I think everyone would have been better off if I'd just stayed disappeared. But then I look at you and at your father, and at this life I'm building, and I know that's the depression lying to me." She flipped a pancake. "Mental illness doesn't just go away, sweetheart. It's something I manage every single day. Some days are easier than others. But I'm here. I'm alive. I'm part of a family again. And that matters more than the guilt. I'm glad you're here, Grandma. Even if it's complicated." "Me too, baby." "Me too." Connor appeared in the doorway, already dressed for the day. "You two making a mess of my kitchen again?" "Our kitchen, Dad. Grandma lives here on Sundays. Those are the rules." Connor smiled. "My mistake." "Carry on then." He watched his daughter and his mother laugh together over pancakes, and he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not perfect peace. Not the absence of pain, but the kind of peace that comes from accepting that life is messy and complicated, and sometimes people you love hurt you, and sometimes you find what you've lost, and sometimes second chances are real. Hurt people deeply. She'd lost years that could never be recovered. But she was here now. She was trying. She was healing. And in the end, wasn't that what family was about? Not perfection, but persistence. Not the absence of mistakes, but the presence of love strong enough to rebuild after the mistakes were made. Connor joined them at the stove. "Move over. Let me show you both how the pancake master does it." "Dad, you burn them every time." "That's called style, Madison." Evelyn laughed. A real laugh. The kind Connor remembered from childhood. And in that moment, with his daughter and his mother and the smell of pancakes filling the kitchen, Connor felt something profound. Gratitude. For the journey that had brought them here. For the daughter who taught him about grace. For the mother who'd found her way home. For second chances and new beginnings and the impossible ways love finds a way. If this story touched your heart, please don't just keep scrolling. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this one. Mental illness is real. Homelessness can happen to anyone. But compassion can bridge gaps we thought were impossible to cross. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Drop a comment and tell me what moment hit you the hardest. Was it when Connor recognized his mother? When Madison showed grace beyond her years? When Evelyn came home for Thanksgiving? When they learned that forgiveness is a choice you make every single day? Your support helps us tell more stories that matter. Stories about real struggles, real healing, real forgiveness. Stories about the messy, complicated, beautiful process of putting broken families back together. Thank you for being part of the Behind Every Heart Stories family. Remember, sometimes the people we're meant to help turn out to be the people we've been searching for all along. That's not coincidence. That's love finding its way home. And if you or someone you love is struggling with mental illness, please reach out to a doctor, to a therapist, to a friend, to anyone. You are not alone. You are not beyond help. You are worthy of healing. See you in the next one. And until then, be the person who stops to help. You never know whose life you might change, including your own.